And I'm a pastry chef instructor here at Kendall College. And today we are going to recreate the Dressel's chocolate fudge whipped cream cake, which was an iconic fixture of many people's childhoods. And it was introduced to the Chicagoland market in the 1920s by Herman Dressel. Monica Cass-Rogers has diligently prepared a home-cooked version of it, and today that's what we're going to do. So our first step is going to be to grease the pans, and you're going to grease them, and then we're going to fit in a sheet of parchment paper. You can cut this parchment yourself. The reason we put it in here is because it's an extra insurance that the cake will not stick in the pan, and actually also the parchment paper on the cake layer will keep the cake much fresher after it's baked. Once your pans are ready, take your butter and remove it from the refrigerator, because one of the things we're going to make for this cake is a creamed method buttercream, and the butter needs to be at room temperature. It should be plastic in consistency. When I touch it, it should feel pliable and bendable before I start to cream it with my buttercream. So just take it out of the refrigerator for about 45 minutes before you start. Now what we're going to start to do is to make our fudge layers, and we're going to start by taking our sugar and adding 3 eggs to that. And I'm going to take it and put it on the mixer. I'm going to start it on low speed just to incorporate the ingredients. Once I have a paste, I'm going to switch it to high speed and beat it for 3 minutes until it's lightly fluffy. Our next step will be to take it off, and I'm going to add the oil. And also the vanilla. I'm going to put it on high speed for 2 more minutes. The reason that we're doing the second mixing time is because the oil is going to combine with the lecithin and the egg yolks, and it's going to slightly emulsify the mixture, which is going to give us a very, very tender crumb. We've whipped this for 2 minutes now, and if you take a look, you can see that this has a little bit of a mayonnaise consistency. Okay, it's slightly thickened, and the eggs are starting to emulsify. Another reason for using oil or liquid shortening as the fat is that the Dressel's cakes, in their production process, were being frozen, and a liquid fat will not set up or congeal as hard as a solid fat will, such as butter. So therefore the cake will stay softer during the freezing process and will thaw out more quickly too. Okay, so I'm going to add boiling water to my cocoa and whisk it in. And doing this step is going to help dissolve the cocoa into something that can disperse very easily throughout the cake. Also, what it's going to do, the heat of the water is going to help to neutralize any raw taste that we have in the cocoa. Once the cocoa is dissolved, I'm going to go ahead and add my baking soda to that. You're going to see it's going to foam a little bit. The reason it's foaming is because of the reaction between the acidity of the cocoa and the soda itself. So that's creating the leavening power. And then my salt is going to go into that mixture too. Okay, so you're going to whisk it in. And now what we're going to do is we're going to add this into our eggs. We should have a very, very thick, glossy egg base. You can start to smell that this is really a chocolate cake. Our next step, once we've created the egg, sugar, fudge base, we're going to add our flour to this. Okay, and so I've got a mixture of cake flour and pastry flour, which is creating like an all-purpose flour blend. The cake flour is always going to create more softness in the cake, but remember that by adding more cake flour, you lose some of the structure, so we're mixing these two together. I'm going to start by adding the pastry flour into this. You can whisk it. The nice thing about this being an oil base is that you actually can whisk this pretty vigorously, and it's not going to adversely affect the cake. And then I'm going to add my cake flour. And just start by gently stirring with your whisk. And as you are stirring, you're going to notice that it gets a little bit thicker and thicker. It becomes almost like a pancake batter consistency. And then what you're going to do is take your whisk and break down any lumps that you see. Okay? And do it in a motion that's not rotating the whisk. Okay? I don't want to be rotating and adding more air into this. All I'm looking to do is to kind of comb through any of the lumps of flour that are in here. Okay? Then once I do that, I've got my batter, which you can see is a really rich russet cocoa color, and it's going to bake off into a very dense, fudgy cake. Okay, before I scale out the batter, I'm going to just stir it a couple times, because what you're going to notice happens with this is that there's a lot of bubbles that form in the process of mixing in the flour. And so when we stir through it just with a spatula, it's going to loosen up some of those bubbles so that your cake is going to bake off with a finer consistency. So I'm just going to stir through this, and then we're going to go ahead and we're going to pour it into our pans, dividing it in half. Okay, these are 9-inch cake pans that we're using. We've got 2 9-inch layers that we're making with this. Okay, you can tap it a couple times. That will loosen up some of the bubbles as well. And then we're going to go ahead, place it on a nice straight sheet tray. And we're going to bake them in the oven for about 40 minutes. Now I'm sliding these into the oven. Be careful to keep them nice and level. And you're going to have those layers baking for about 35 minutes. The key to the Dressel's whipped cream cake was at its heart it had over 1 inch of real whipped cream. In a production situation such as they were in, they used a complicated method of stabilizing the whipped cream to build the cake that high. At home, you can use 2 different types of stabilizers that are very, very easily accessible. And the first one we're going to talk about is agar-agar, which is a vegetable gelatin. Okay? In order to make an agar-agar base, you're going to add it to water and boil it for 5 minutes, chill it, and then you can add it to whipped cream and it will stabilize your whipped cream. The other one, made with gelatin, you might be more familiar with. We'll show you that in a minute too. So you're going to chill your agar-agar until it's tepid, and then you're going to add it to whipping cream before the cream hits soft peak stage. You can see that with the agar-agar, the body of this whipped cream is very, very firm, and it really holds up, almost like a buttercream when you're making the cake. We showed you how to stabilize whipped cream using agar-agar. This is a separate batch, and what we're going to do is stabilize this with gelatin so that you know 2 different ways to stabilize your whipped cream. We took our gelatin, we bloomed it for 10 minutes with very, very cold water. That's so important. And then we melted it to get it really kind of hot to the touch. It should be about 130 to 150 degrees. And once our cream is whipped up to the point where it's holding the tracks of the whisk, but it's still very liquid, I can go ahead and pour my gelatin in. Turn the mixer to second speed and finish whipping it that way. That's a good idea because once the gelatin is in, it's going to whip up really quickly. And if you over whip it, the nice texture of the whipped cream is going to be ruined.